Hi, everyone. My name is Drea Flores, and I am the business librarian at the Aurora Public Library District. I want to welcome everyone to this evening's business program, Breaking Down Barriers to Business Ownership, with our guest speakers, Harriet Parker, manager of the Illinois Small Business Development Center, and from the Women's Business Development Center in Aurora, Aisha McBurrows, director of entrepreneurial services, and Abigail Scanlon, Director of Access to Capital for the WBDC. In this presentation, we will cover the common barriers entrepreneurs face when starting a business and help you understand how to minimize your startup risks and take the next steps to business ownership. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to add them into the chat for our presenters to answer during the Q&A session at the end. I want to remind everyone that this workshop is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on our library's YouTube channel. So now I'd like to welcome our first presenter, Harriet Parker. So Harriet, I'm about to turn things over to you. Just one moment.
Great. Are you ready for me?
There you go.
Okay. Thank you. Drea, thanks for inviting us to do this workshop. And I'm going to share my screen and get that up here so that you can see that okay, right? Okay, so as Drea mentioned, I am the manager of the Small Business Development Center at Waubonsee Community College. And one of the reasons that we are putting this workshop on is because of the enormous number of businesses that have been starting up recently. And just to kind of cover some topics that might be of interest to you as if you're thinking about starting a business and kind of how to take the next step forward. So first of all, just a little bit about the Small Business Development Center. We are a grant-funded program, as is the Women's Business Development Center. We get our funding from the Small Business Administration. Our organization is also funded by the Department of Commerce. And then we get matching funds from and are hosted by the college. And we are located in the downtown Aurora campus of Waubonsee Community College. We are available for one-on-one assistance with your business at any stage of your business, from startup to all the way to exit. And we can meet either in person at our office at the college, or we can meet remotely on Zoom. So whatever works best for you, we can accommodate. In addition to our one-on-one business coaching, we also offer a number of different workshops on small business topics. And then we also have some access to some market research tools, as does the library, and some specialty resources in the areas of QuickBooks and HR and other kind of specialty areas of small business. So that is a little bit about what we offer. And what I want to start to talking tonight about is some of the barriers that you might face if you are thinking about starting your own business. So many times when you start to reach out and say, I'm starting a business, I need assistance. And the first thing that comes up a lot of times is the business plan. So it's like, okay, you need to start working on that business plan. And that is true. But one of the things that I want to talk about first is some of the things that you should be thinking about or that you might be facing just in those initial considerations about becoming an entrepreneur. So, and these are a few, and I guess one of the things to say is it's not easy to start your own business, but the more you know, the better. So some of the barriers that might be preventing you or slowing you down from starting, I've got them listed here. I just want to talk a little bit about each of them. So number one, obviously, is money. And Abby is going to be talking about that a little bit farther in the presentation. But one of the things that when I talk to clients about starting up and we talk about what are their financial needs, and one of the things is okay, I need so much money to start this business. But a lot of times you have options. You can scale it down, you can kind of change the format of that business. And so when you start that conversation about how much money do I need to start this business, you also want to talk about, well, what are your options if your number one idea is not going to work out financially? So having that discussion about different options and the costs and things like that are things that we address with entrepreneurs all the time. And it's a great thing to start talking about. The next thing is time. How much time do you have? I think one of the biggest misconceptions, especially for people that are saying, I'm tired of working in the corporate world, I want to come out and I want to do my own thing. I want to be able to have a flexible schedule, control when I work and when I don't work. And I just want to say that you are most likely going to be working longer hours in your own business than maybe you worked in your job or the corporate world. Now, you might enjoy those hours a lot more, but it's maybe a misconception that it's going to be less time. So that's another thing, is to just think through what kind of time is it going to take to invest in that business. And again, we look just like we did with the financial considerations, is are there different options or different variations on your idea that are going to fit into your timeline better and your time constraints. The next thing is family. When entrepreneurs start and they kind of think, oh, I'm going to be doing this. But if you have a family, what you do in your business is going to have an impact on the rest of your family. So you definitely want to make sure that you discuss your business ideas with your family. Are they on board with what you're thinking about doing? How will they be involved? How will running this business impact them? Are you working out of your home? If so, what's the impact? If you're working various hours, what is the impact? So you want to think about your family dynamics and what the, what starting your own business, how that's going to impact that. History and psychology are really kind of a little bit tied together, and everybody, brings the story of their life into what they do in their business. A lot of times, there's psychology wrapped up in what's been your past. I know I worked with a client one time that wanted to start a certain business, and she just was surrounded by people that just kept telling her, you're never going to be successful doing that. That is never going to work out. That's not a good idea. And she just had that beaten into her head that it wasn't a good idea. And yet when we sat down and we did some analysis on what she was thinking about doing and how much she could charge and where that money would come from, we actually determined that it was a pretty viable idea. And by having those tools, she was able to get the confidence up to go ahead and start that business, and ended up being very successful at it. So just the things you've been told, the, whatever is in your history or the psychology of thinking about what you're doing. Again, I would just encourage you to, get some outside resources to help you analyze some of that. And so, this is the starting point, right? Before you even start your business plan, these are some of the considerations and the things you need to be thinking about and talking about with your friends, with your family, but definitely these are things that a business advisor can help you think through and ask critical questions and help you kind of guide you through some of this very early stage thought process. The next thing you want to start to think about if you're going to open your own business is, who are you? What are you good at? What aren't you good at? A lot of times when you start your own business, we use the term, you're wearing all the hats, right? So you're everything. You're the product or service provider. You're the accountant. You're the janitor. You're the salesperson. You're the marketing person. So you're wearing all those hats. But even before you start, you want to think about what are all the different disciplines that are going to be needed in my business, and which ones do you know how to do and do well, and which ones are not really kind of in your sweet spot. It could be that you're not good at it. It could be that you just don't like doing it. And so when you start to plan your business, you want to think about which ones of those hats do you need to take off, and how soon do you need to take them off, so you can plan to allocate some costs to those particular areas. Also, what resources do you have at your disposal? Who do you know? Do you know, who do you know that are good at certain things? Can you have somebody help you out with a favor? Or can you do some bartering to get, at least get things off the ground? And then, of course, the SBDC, Women's Business Development Center, are just tremendous resources and no cost to you to be able to help you start to think through things, but also to coach you in your business once you've got it open. What's your motivation for starting a business? Is it money? Is it fulfillment? Is it change? Like what is causing you to decide to do this? And then are the things that are motivating you as you start to put your plan together, are you seeing that this business is going to fulfill those areas of motivation? And then lastly, again, back to the money topic, is what are your financial needs? So, you have different considerations if your business needs to give you a living wage from the very beginning than if you have a spouse or other family member who's also earning income and you just need to supplement that. Or maybe you don't need the financial resources from the business, but it's just more to kind of fulfill interests that you have. So these are all questions you need to ask yourself and analyze as you're getting started. And then this last piece here is probably, getting a little bit closer now to when we're putting that business plan together, but it's thinking about your idea from the customer's perspective. So many times when you're just thinking about getting started, you're passionate about what you do. You're good at what you do. You're just really excited about taking that product or service to market and having it be your thing. But now you have to turn that around and look at that from the customer's perspective. So what's the competitive landscape, right? So who else is delivering a similar product or service to what you are doing? Why is that prospect out there going to be interested in your product or service, and how are you going to attract them? What income level does that person need to be in? What are the demographics of your target customer? What do they need? What do they want? And then how are you going to get them to know about you and be interested in you? So we have to sort of step outside our own passions and interests and put ourselves in the shoes of the customer to say, why would that customer be interested in what I'm doing? And again, this is something that is definitely an integral part of putting the business plan together, and an area where you want to spend some time doing some research, maybe doing some surveys or focus groups, or getting involved in local business networks to start to assess what the competitive landscape looks like. So these are all things that will give you kind of a starting point on what to think about, what to start to plan for. And then I'm going to hand it over now to Aisha, I believe, at the Women's Business Development Center. And she's going to talk about, okay, what's next? So Aisha, I'm going to stop sharing and it's all yours.
All right. So 5 steps so on my part, I'm going to talk about how to get your business registered. But I started to think, and we were having conversations, this beautiful team of ours. And even before you get registered, there's things that you need to do before. you get registered. And one of the biggest things to kind of piggyback off of what Harriet was talking about is that business plan. So I'm going to go a little deeper into the different steps that I think are very important for you to do in your business plan before you even start to think about getting registered. A lot of people and clients, sometimes they come to us already and they've got their EIN number and, they're an LLC or an S Corp and they don't have a business plan set up. And so, if you've already done it that way, that's fine. But, if you are just starting with an idea, our advice is to start with the business plan. So I'm going to take you through those steps now. Okay. So the first step of preparing or starting a business is you have to be able to explain a problem. What problem exists out there, right? What problem can you solve? And then so there's a problem, what problem can you solve? And then is that solution going to be viable for the market that you're trying to enter? Okay. And so you want to think about what the problem is and to be able to explain what it is, and then be able to explain how you are a solution to that problem. So let's go to step 2. Research. And again, Harriet touched on this. So some of this will overlap a little bit, but research. Research also involves your looking at your market research. So what area you're going to do business is in, even if you're not going to be a brick and mortar, you still want to be able to know where your customers and your clients are coming from. And so that's going to help when you start building your marketing plan, because I talk to a lot of my clients about not just doing blanket marketing. So for instance, if you're using social media or, Facebook or Instagram and those type of platforms, you have an opportunity to purchase advertising, right? Well, you don't want to purchase and pay a whole lot of money to advertise to everybody. You want to be able to narrow that down to whoever your target market is. So whether they live in a certain zip code, whether they, are in a certain income level, and then area, what's going on in that area. So you definitely want to make sure that you're doing your market research and then also narrowing down who your target market is going to be. So it can't be everyone. Everyone is not going to be your client. And I think once you kind of get that, understanding, you want to be able to just service the clients that are going to be able to buy from you, the clients that are going to see you as a solution to their problem. So that's the second step. The third step, plan. And that's where the business plan comes in. So this is a part that, sometimes it's challenging. It's not the fun part. It can be fun because you're working on, your business. You could be handing this off as a legacy. But you have to make time to work on the business. And that is, having a team, in terms of when I usually sit down with my clients and they say, oh, I want to open a trucking business. Okay, great. Who on your team has trucking experience? Is there anyone that's going to be working with you that has this experience? And sometimes they say no. I say, okay, it doesn't mean that if you don't have experience that you can't go into the business. But, there's a lot of things that you may not have considered as far as licensing, certifications, and things like that you need. So you want to make sure that you're planning, doing again, I talked about the target market, doing your market research. Who is going to be on your team? Are you going to be a solo operator? Are you going to need to hire people? What type of capital will you need? And Abby will go into that a little bit later. What type of capital will you need to open this business? And what I usually always say to my clients when I send them over to Abby and her team is that they're going to ask you for a business plan. And they're going to ask you, did you talk to your banker? So, at least let them know if they can't wait to do the business plan, they still want to talk to them. I do give them that disclaimer that they're going to ask for this, because as a former lender myself, commercial banking lender myself, when clients will come in and say, I need a loan, I said, okay, how much do you need? Oh, I think maybe, 25 or 50. that already gives the lender, some chills, because how do you, if you've done your plan, then you should know exactly how much you need to ask in terms of capital for your business. And then you need to be able to show them how you're going to pay it back. So again, plan. I think I've drove that home. And then you build it. Build in terms of your infrastructure, your systems. Have you done the research? Do you need to create a new app? Do you need to work with an IT person or a coder? Are there certain programs that you're going to need to purchase and to make sure that your product or even service is flowing smoothly? So even if you're a service-based business, and if you are capturing data and they're filling out an application online, what is the process of that when that person first sees your advertisement and then they're putting in their information for an inquiry? How does that funnel through to you? And so those type of things need to be built out in advance, or at least have that research done so that you know what type of individual you'll need to hire, as well as what type of individual that may need to build a program or a set of different infrastructure or process in place for you. And then operate. So I'm going to go into a little more detail because I kind of went into some of the things I was going to say in my presentation. So let's go to the next slide, Abby. All right. So we already talked about this again, right? Explain the problem. What problems are you solving? What issues are you dealing with? Next slide. And just in case I didn't say it, be clear and concise. Be as specific as possible. Be specific as possible. One of the examples, we can go to the next slide, Abby. One of the examples is this one, as far as there was a big problem with people catching cabs. Have any of you ever had to hail a cab down when it was raining, when it was snowing, or maybe you live in an urban area that kind of shuts down after a certain time, or maybe you live, somewhere what they call the country, right, where no one wants to go because it's too far. So there was definitely a great problem, and then some company found a solution. And do we all know what that solution is? Go to the next slide. Uber. And I used to say all the time, I would never, ever get into a car with a stranger. Haven't we taught our children that? Or have you heard that when you were growing up, is that you don't talk to strangers, you don't get into cars with strangers? Well, now this is a part of life. Now they have, Uber, Lyft, and there's an array of different services that you can put on your phone, and with a quick touch of a button, have someone show up to the location that you're at. So again, sometimes these ideas may seem far-fetched, but again, if you can be clear and concise and be able to solve a problem, wow, I wish I would have thought about Uber. Next slide. So these are some of the other companies that had problems, that there were problems, and then they solved them. So Facebook helped you connect and share with people in your life. And I can also remember a time when, now I'm dating myself, when there was MySpace and before Facebook. And I remember I'm not getting on MySpace. I never got on MySpace. I was like, that's just ridiculous. People sharing music and songs, and what do they, you don't even know these people, And then when Facebook came out, it took me a long time to get on Facebook. But now I think I've been on Facebook for 10 years. I forgot how long they've been out. And this is a way that we communicate with people. People do advertising, they do social media campaigns. Now there's paid advertising. You can set up a business page. So, don't ever think sometimes that your idea is too far-fetched. You just have to make sure that you're planning for it. So these are just some of the other examples of different organizations or companies that provided solutions to problems. Next slide. So we talked about the market research. So that would be the second step. And then the business plan. So write the plan. Now, Harriet mentioned before is in her presentation as well, is that both of us, we have some tools that you may be able to use when planning, when doing your business plan, excuse me. And I think Harriet did put a template, thank you, Harriet, in the chat. So you can use that to get started, because sometimes you just don't know how to get started and how do you label it. And one of the things that I want to say, one of the things that I want to say as far as the business plan is, don't get overwhelmed with it, right? Sometimes when people think about the business plan, they think about, oh, it's got to be like a 30-page document with all these pictures and, you know, these graphs, and sometimes it can become intimidating. So don't allow, you know, what you may have seen when maybe in school, or you've seen a competition and you've seen all these graphs and these fancy documents and stuff like that. Don't let that discourage you from writing the business plan. Use the template that Harriet put in the link, or find a template that you feel comfortable with. They also have a digital platform that you can, they have different digital platforms that you can also do a business plan. I wouldn't suggest spending too much money on those platforms when you can use one of the free links that we have available at the SBDC or the WBDC. So just make sure that you are, you know, you doing those things and planning everything out. And then you can go and get registered for your EIN number. And then you can talk to a licensed professional on how you know, if you should set up a sole proprietor or doing a DBA or assumed name. So doing business as, if you're going to do an LLC, an S Corp, or C Corp. And a lot of times people want to skip that step. The popular option nowadays is to just, oh, I'm just going to go form an LLC. How do you know that that LLC is going to be right for your tax situation? You want to definitely make sure that you're considering, you know, your personal taxes, and then how that may affect the business taxes. And then also you want to think about protection. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So how do I form a business? And then you go ahead and go through so this is just, again, wrapping up of all the different steps that we put down that I discussed earlier. Research. You know, if you want to have that strong foundation, this is where it starts, is to do the plan first and to do the work for it first. If you're going to have a brick and mortar, or are you going to be a home-based business? Since the last 2 years, a lot of businesses have transitioned to their employees working out of their office, you know, so using things like this is a tool, Zoom, and there's other GoToMeetings, and there's other platforms that you can also use to run your business. But you may have a business that you actually need to have a brick and mortar, a location. So you want to make sure that you are looking, again, doing that market research, that you're looking to see what area you want to open in. Is there foot traffic? You know, is there parking? You know, how much is the lease? What are the stipulations? If you're going to think about purchasing a building, you know, then you want to definitely talk to someone on Abby's team in terms of the financing and capital and how that may look. Is there another? Then you can do the, you know, choosing your company name. Now, some people may already have done this. You can, you know, out of order, and you choose your company name. When you choose your company name, you want to start researching to make sure that the company name has not been taken. One of the ways that you can do that is you can start searching, at least in your state, the state of Illinois. You can go on the Illinois site and you can do a LLC or S Corp or C Corp search. You can do a company name search to see if that company name has already, you know, been taken, or there's a company that's already operating under that name. And so that's one way to do it. You can also, another way to do it is, I think that's the next point is you can do the reserve a domain name. Now, there's different sites that you can go to. There's the GoDaddy, there's Google domains, and there's a lot of domain the domain companies that you can purchase from. But usually, and again, this is not a guarantee, But usually if your company name, and you go and try to purchase, if their company name has been purchased as far as the domain. So if you go on the GoDaddy, you put ABC Company, and ABC Company has been taken, then that's most likely saying that there may be that company name out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but you want to make sure that you reserve that domain. So that domain name first, in my opinion, because usually that's a lower cost, right? That's a lower cost than going to get the LLC and going to get the business, the EIN number and the tax, like just that whole process. You want to go ahead and secure that, because usually that it could be under $10 or under $20 to go ahead and reserve that domain name. So that would be important. And then choose your legal structure and comply with regulations. Again, please seek out a licensed professional, an attorney, an accountant, a CPA, or a certified tax preparer, and allow them to be able to at least guide you and advise you in a way of how you should set up and structure your company. Working for years working at the bank, I saw a company that firsthand that was set up incorrectly, and they ended up owing a lot of taxes. Just from if you would have done this, then you could have been able to write off certain things and things like that. So again, don't just go with what the masses are doing. Just because the LLC may be the lower cost option, or even, of course, the DBA doing as a sole proprietor, that will be the lesser cost. Still make sure that you talk to someone that can guide you in that area instead of just running with what everyone else is doing, if that makes sense. And I think obtain the federal tax ID number, and then obtain an Illinois business tax ID number. And then also, it depends on what location you're in. If you're in the city of Chicago, you may have to purchase, sign up for a business license there. So you want to be able to check what city, county that you're in, and to make sure that there's not any other licenses or certifications or anything that you need to sign up for in terms of your business, especially like, for instance, if you're going into the food business. So there's another set of licenses and certifications that you need to be able to operate. If you're going to be a chef, or you're going to be doing preparing food out your home, or maybe even a food truck. And I think safely satisfy registration and licensing requirements. So I talked about that. And I think there's one more. Is that it? And then open a business bank account. This is one of the things that we found a lot of businesses did not have a business bank account and was not set up structurally correct when they had a lot of the PPP loans that came out during the pandemic, as well as different grants. The city of Chicago had grants. I know the city of Aurora had grants. The county of DuPage, a lot of different areas, and municipalities had different grants that were available, right? The state of Illinois had the big grant, but a lot of people missed out on these opportunities because they weren't set up properly. Maybe they didn't have an EIN number. They weren't registered. They didn't have a business license. They didn't have a business bank account. Okay. And so these are some of the things that they were looking for, just to say, check off and say, yes, you may qualify, or you qualify for a grant. Me being able to serve on one of the teams, being able to approve some of the grants, it hurt to have to pass people by because they didn't have, their paperwork in order. Their business license had expired. There's so many different things. And so you want to make sure, don't just start your business, right? Make sure that you go through these steps so that if those opportunities happen to come up, whether it's a grant, whether there's an opportunity for access to capital, a loan, and you don't have all your paperwork in order. Now you're putting more pressure on the professionals, right? That I advised to get in the beginning. Now you're on a wait list, right? So just go ahead and take the time to do the planning first. Get the business plan, do the research, come and then do the, your company name, making sure it's not talking to a professional, getting set up properly, and then you're ready to open your doors. So I think that would be it. And I'm going to turn it over to Abby. Let me see if we have one more slide.
You had one more thing on there, Aisha, number 11.
Oh, insure your company. Oh, that's my favorite.
I was going
to say. Yeah, sorry about that. Definitely. You want to make sure that you insure your company, especially if you have a brick and mortar. You want to make sure it's almost not an option, but I know you have an option because it's not certain buildings will require you to have insurance, but you want to make sure that you're talking to an insurance professional to make sure you have the right coverage, because if someone gets hurt on your property, if something happens, and even if there's a storm, a tornado, and those type of things happen here in the Midwest, the high winds, you want to make sure that you have that insurance. So then at least you're not having to pay maybe $25,000 or $10,000 to get something repaired. You may be just paying your deductible. So just make sure you check with that. And also when you're looking at your deductibles, you want to make sure that you understand what your deductible is, and make sure it's an actual flat rate, or if they may say something like it'll be 1% of the total value of something, which could be very large. So you just want to make sure, again, the planning. So you have that plan in place so that if something happens to the property, whether it's a damage, through hopefully not, a burglary, but wind, Mother Nature type of damage. If somebody runs into your, with a car, runs into your place of business, that has happened. I've seen it several times, whether it's weather related or fast driving, things like that. So just make sure that you have the proper amount of coverage for your company, but make sure you have a few conversations with a few financial professionals before you decide to hire them, but definitely get them on your team before you open your doors. I don't know if that slide was out. That was operate. I think I may have had that slide out of place. Sorry about that. All right. So this is where I will turn it over to Abby, and she is going to talk about, which is usually the most popular topic, the money.
Yes, the money.
This is what we get asked this like literally every day. How do I get money for my business? So Abby will take you through that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Good evening, everybody. So just really quick too, before I get into some of this fun stuff with the money, I just want to say that Harriet's information and Aisha's information is so important. A lot of times, everyone, people do come and see me to talk about, where can I get funding for my business and what kind of startup capital or grants are out there, right? But usually I would say about 97% of the time, I will always ask them that wonderful question that we've all been reiterating, which is, do you have a business plan, right? That is such an important factor for any stage of the game, right? I sat with a lot of clients. A lot of them have come up with, oh, well, it's all in my head, or, oh, it's an old one, or, it's something that I planned, or it's on a napkin, or whatever the case is, right? I would even give you points if it was on a napkin, right? But we do want a business plan, right? Because a lot of times, like I said, if somebody comes to me and they say they don't have one, or if it's just kind of floating around in their head, I will typically send them right back to Harriet, or right back to Aisha, or right back to any one of my team members on our entrepreneurial services team, where they actually sit down and kind of help you structure your business plan and give you feedback on it. And also ask you, that important question, is this plan even feasible, right? So, because that's going to go into all of this startup capital, right? Because if the plan isn't feasible and if it's not well thought out, then most lenders or institutions or any one of those places that you're going to look for money from, they're not necessarily going to be able to say yes to you, right? And so all these things that Harriet and Aisha spoke of, this is getting you to the yes and getting you to the point where you can actually access capital. So moving right along. So we have a mantra over at our WBDC Access to Capital team, and it is the right capital at the right time and from the right source, right? So every business has different needs at every stage, right? Whether you're pre-venture, seed, startup, growth, expansion, or mature, every single business is going to have their own type of capital needs, and then also their own type of capital modalities, meaning, there's loans, there's lines of credit, there's grants, there's so many different avenues that funding or capital is structured in, right? So it's really about, where are you in this stage of the business cycle, and what is it that you actually need the funds for, right? So again, right capital at the right time and from the right source. That is also so important, right? Because, everyone, their first experience is usually trying to go to your bank or your traditional lending institutions, and then you get turned down, and then people get disappointed, and then they feel, they should give up. Well, that's not necessarily the right source for your startup and your pre-venture seed stage businesses, right? So this is why I stress our mantra so much. All right, so this is something that we share at the WBDC. So, if you are talking about capital, what are your options, right? And I want to focus on these two stages this evening because that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about the seed, pre-venture, startup, and launch. So in our eyes, in the world of lending, right, you are in these stages if you have no revenue at all, or you're not generating any kind of consistent revenue, right? So you're getting a little bit of revenue here and there, or there's still pretty large gaps in time where you're getting consistent revenue, right? And so everyone's always kind of surprised when they're like, oh, well, I've been in business for 3 or 4 years and you still consider me a startup. And it's like, yeah, we do, because I can tell from your history that, for the first couple of years, this was more of like a side hustle or like a hobby. And now it's expanding into like a full-blown business, right? And you're getting consistent revenue, right? That's what's going to actually take you into this new stage of growth and emerging. So for any business, it could range between 0 to 6 months or 6 to 24 months. It just kind of really depends on the business. But I want to break down for everybody, when you're in these two stages of business, again, your time in business is typically you're not in business, or you're still thinking of the business, or you're in the ideation stage, or you're 0 to 6 months, right? Like you've now figured out that this side hustle of yours could actually generate some money for you. So you're really at the very fruition of this business. You're at the launch, right? Revenue is typically none, or it's just generating just a little bit, right? Like you're putting a little extra pocket money into your bank account, right? And for these different stages, for seed, it's typically going to be, bootstrapping. That's kind of your major startup. So, anything that you've saved. Maybe you're using personal credit cards, your employment income, because again, it's a side hustle that you feel that you want to kind of grow, or maybe you're in your swan song, right? And so you've already retired, and so you've got pensions and Social Security. A lot of times, people will use home equity lines or loans, right? Because they've got collateral, and most banks will actually not be able to lend to you at this stage. So we're using our own personal assets like your home to secure some kind of line or a loan, right? And then there's always your family and friends, investors. Those are kind of like my favorite, right? It's like mom, dad, uncle, aunt, or whoever, that kind of believes in this business that you're starting, right? You also have options like personal loans, investment income, crowdfunding, and then this is kind of like the rare end, but like your life insurance policy, you can do a loan against that. But that's being a little bit risky, right? But if you're really looking for capital, you want to kind of start exhausting all sorts of different options. So that's kind of your seed state pre-venture, and that's to kind of get the business launched and ready to go, right? And then you've got your startup and launch. So for this one, it's basically the same thing. You may be able to, at this point, because you've got the business account set up, you should be able to get a business credit card, or you can look to small loans from a nonprofit like the WBDC. The WBDC actually has their own loan portfolio that we offer clients to lend with. But again, there's a little bit of restrictions there just because they are considered high risk, those startups. And then client financing. So meaning like you're kind of like contracting with your clients to kind of meet you halfway on certain deals, right? So those are some of the options. And then some recommended sources for those options are Kiva, and WBDC is actually a Kiva hub, and I'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment, but Kiva is an option for this stage, as well as the WBDC. There's organizations that are called CDFIs, which are Community Development Financial Institutions. Allies for Community Business is one of them. We've got Greenwood and Archer. And then banks, again, are going to be your option for that. And that's usually just a credit card, right? Like most banks won't typically give you a startup line of credit for a business if you don't have any kind of consistent revenue at this point. I like to also provide like your average loan amount or line amount that most lenders will give you. And, it's not going to be a lot, right? But it's enough to kind of get your business started, get your licensing going, and maybe kind of get some inventory started for you, right? So kind of going into that conversation is, what exactly are your startup costs? This is the basics of it, right? Like you want to know how much this is going to cost you, right? And if you go to the SBA, and I think we're going to share this document with those that are here, but you can go to the SBA and do a little bit of calculating, right, in terms of what your startups or what your startup costs are going to be. And this is really crucial, right, because you want to know like who you can turn to for a certain amount of money. So in this example here, this business has figured out that they need about $18,000 for their startup costs, right? So based off of the previous slide, $18,000, you may have to go to like a CDFI for that, right? Because crowdfunding might not be an option unless you do GoFundMe or something, right? But knowing how much you need is going to give you like a starting point as to who you're going to go to next for the right source of capital. But knowing this number is going to be super crucial for you, right? Like, I get a lot of clients that just come to me. And again, Aisha mentioned this earlier. We always ask the question, how much is it do you need? And it's like, I don't know. And it's like, you should know, there's tools out there that are provided, like I said, from the SBA, and you can go to this link here, but they can provide you with those tools. So that's never something that you're questioning. It's not a mystery to you. So really quick, this is Kiva Chicago. We at the WBDC are actually a hub, and this is a source for clients to be able to get some funding, right? And this is a really, really great program. It's 0% interest on loans up to $15,000, right? Again, this is going to get you started, maybe get you a few pieces of equipment or a little bit of inventory to get you started, right? But it's essentially a crowdfunding lending platform. So you are actually using the power of the crowd, is what we say for Kiva, right? You're basically leveraging your social network and actually anyone in the country, because it is a national program, to help you fund, the money that you need for your startup funds. So this is great. There's not a lot of requirements for it. We have a wonderful program manager on this, Gabriela Bomben. I can provide that information in the chat, but this is a great program for you to start with if you are looking for startup funding. And again, this is actually what we consider in our Access to Capital team as one of the lowest rungs of capital that are out there. Grants are even lower than that. And we mean the lowest rung because it's a little bit easier to obtain and the interest is not high, right? But this would be the next level up. And again, 0% interest on this. Another source is our own WBDC direct loan program. And this is just a little bit of information for everybody. And I do encourage that everybody come and seek us out to talk about what options are available. And I know it's, we've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna just really quickly go over, this is the other thing too, everybody. A lot of times when it comes to raising capital for your business, everybody kind of forgets that, you know, it's not just about the business, especially at the startup stage, that lenders and institutions that are going to give you the money are looking to assess, right? It's definitely going to be you as the business owner. You and the business are one at this point still, right? Even though the business is a separate entity, you and the business are still one, and therefore your credit is going to play a big important part in getting capital. So I always encourage everybody, know the 5 C's of credit and know your know where you are in terms of your credit, right? There's free programs out there like Credit Karma. A lot of people get their credit score through their credit cards. Know what your credit score is, right? Like I want that to be everybody's homework. So you've got character, you've got capital, character meaning your credit, capital meaning what have you bootstrapped or what have you invested into the company already or into the startup. Capacity is, you know, the business's ability to repay the loan or the debt. And then we've got collateral, which is what kind of collateral or security can you offer to the bank or to whatever institution that you're going to for funding to secure the loan. And then conditions. And you know, talk about this last C on the 5 C's of credit, right? This condition is just really wreaking havoc on everybody's lives, you know, meaning the pandemic, right? And actually there's a lot going on right now when it comes to conditions. There's inflation, there's the pandemic, you know, there's, you know, all of the news going on across the seas, right? So conditions also play a really huge part when it comes to the 5 C's of credit. So off we go. And then the other thing I just want everyone to be on top of is just beware of predatory practices. Quick money doesn't always mean it's the best money. So just be cautious of that. You know, if you're kind of not feeling too great about an application or, you know, the rate or whatever the case is, like come see us. We can walk you through it. We can let you know if this is a good deal or not, but definitely seek some help. But you always want to read the fine print on all of the loan documents that you sign. Again, we know that everyone is typically desperate for capital, but, you know, be cautious. So that is all I have. I still, you know, I just want to encourage everybody, come seek out some assistance from Aisha, Harriet, or myself if you need any assistance with learning more about capital. But I do want to turn it over to Harriet to kind of finish us off.
Thanks, Abby and Aisha. That's great. And I know there was a question in the chat about Etsy and not having a super quick answer, but definitely that is something that any of us can help you out with. Internet business has some considerations. Using a platform like Etsy also has some considerations. So you can probably find a lot just searching in the internet, but we would be more than happy to help you with that kind of a question. So I'm going to just go back to my slides real quickly. And just to wrap it up, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what are some keys to success. And a lot of this has been covered already, but so I'm going to just kind of recap it. And Aisha, I just wanted to tell you that I did have a client whose business was destroyed by a tornado and they were not insured. And so your comment about insurance is definitely, a lot of times people think, oh, it's never going to happen to me, but assessing risk is something that's really important. We've all kind of beat the drum on the business plan. And I know a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't really want to do the business plan, or do I really need a business plan? Yes, you need a business plan. And the good thing is, though, that we all have templates and assistance and ways to kind of help coach you through that process. So don't skip it, get help and put a nice solid plan together. Everything else you do is going to depend on that plan. Research your competition. The more you know about who else offers similar products or services, the better, the more successful you're going to be. Be able to explain why your business is important. Like, why should the customer care? What do you offer that's different, unique, that fills a need or a gap that's out there? So be able to really explain that when you talk to people about your business. I mentioned earlier, putting yourself in your customer's shoes. Think like, try to kind of think about, well, if I was going to buy this, what would be my, what would be my reasons to buy or not to buy? What would be my arguments? And thinking through that. Define your business model. So that gets to the financials. What are you going to charge for what you're selling? And how are you going to make money doing it? And to make sure you're really taking into consideration all the costs related to doing business, and also costs maybe related to growing that business. So if you're doing everything yourself to start with, but you're planning to hire people later, is your pricing going to support that growth and the addition of those costs? The next is to let the planning process help you decide if this is a good idea or not, or if this is the right time to do this business. A lot of times people will kind of approach the business plan of, well, I'm going to kind of just make it work. But you want to make sure that if the business plan is raising red flags or making you feel maybe more nervous than when you started, then that's a sign that either maybe this is the wrong time, or you need to tweak that plan and, kind of look at a different approach. And the last thing is just to not get discouraged, right? If you are putting that plan together and it just doesn't seem like it's working out, it's not showing profits, it's not making you enough money, that doesn't mean you just have to give it up, right? Just continue to work and rework that plan, look at your different options. Maybe it's not the right time yet. Maybe it's not exactly the right model. And those are things that we can help you make those decisions about. And then lastly, so what's next? First of all, I would just really strongly encourage you to talk to other people about your ideas and get feedback. Get that, who's a prospective customer? Talk to people, get feedback, and especially get help with the planning process and even the thought process from one of the no-cost resources that are available to you. So the Small Business Development Center, Women's Business Development Center, and then also SCORE. So there are lots of resources around to help you that are no cost, and take advantage of them. Be open-minded, be open to learning, right? People hear me say this all the time, that entrepreneurs are stubborn know-it-alls. If you weren't a stubborn know-it-all, you would probably never start your own business. But be open-minded and open to learning, and get as much information as you can. Be patient in the process, don't rush it, and just keep going until everything comes together and the time is right. And if that's something you're passionate about and you just continue to work that plan and put the pieces together, chances are good that they will come together at the right time in the right way. And we are here to help you to do that. I do have all the contact information on this slide. So I know that, Drea, it's being recorded, and people can email us or call us, and we would be more than happy to help you.
Okay, thank you guys so much. Does anyone have any questions for our Q&A session right now? Just opening it up. If not, look out for the library's future business and career programs by visiting our event calendar on our website, www.aurorapubliclibrary.org. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.